we also engaged Elrond Lawrence, our next presenter, to give us a look at the southern transcontinentals, and particularly the Santa Fe line from Chicago to Los Angeles, and particularly its portion that follows historic Highway Route 66 through New Mexico, Arizona, and California. So Elrond Lawrence is going to be our next presenter. He is a writer, photographer, and public relations professional with a passion for railroads and vintage highways. Elrond grew up in Fontana, California, within sight of the Santa Fe Railway's 2nd District main line and former U.S. Highway 66. Weekend trips to the desert with his parents sealed his love for trains and the open road. He authored the book Route 66 Railway, and his work appears in Trains Magazine, Railfan and Railroad, the NRHS Bulletin, and other publications. Elrond joins us today from California's Central Coast near Salinas, where he lives with his wife Laura and 3 cats. And he stays active there in Southern California rail preservation. Won't you please give a warm virtual welcome to Elrond Lawrence? And Kim, this is also just a reminder to make sure we've got video running for this show. Elrond, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Scott. Thank you. And I should just point out, after watching Justin, I think I'm slowly transforming into Justin Franz. I've got the look, I've got the beard. I mean, I'm going to keep the hat on so they can tell the difference between the two of us at parties.
The quarantine does strange things to us.
Yes, this is the COVID look. It's changing us all. Can you hear me okay, Scott? Are we all right?
You're a little bit quiet. I can hear you okay. You're a little bit quieter than Justin was.
Okay, so let's see if I can hold this up a little higher, and maybe that will help. How is that?
That is a little bit better, yeah.
Okay, I'll try to project a little better if I can too. Okay.
We can also turn our volume up because it is coming through pretty clear.
Okay, sounds good. Let's see. So should I share my screen, or can help me out with that?
Well, is your
you're set up as a presenter, Elrond, so you should be able to share.
Okay, got it. Let's see. So we want my screen. Oh, let's hope I'm getting this right. Oops, that's not working, is it? Let's see. Let's hold on just a moment. I think we'll get this right.
It looks like a lightsaber fight to me.
It is. I'm so my Star Wars heritage is showing through. How's that?
You need to talk to Adrian, our archivist. I think the two of you might have some conversations beyond trains you could have.
Yes, Adrian. All right, let's talk after today. Okay. Is this looking good, everyone? Are we good?
Looks great to me, El.
All right. Okay. Thanks so much, Scott. And thanks everyone for being here today. And hello from the Central Coast of California. I just really want to send a special thanks to Scott and the CRPA team for inviting me to be a part of virtual conversations and for pulling together this remarkable event in an amazingly short time. Justin and everyone have set a really high bar today, so I hope I can measure up. Let's get started. We'll take a trip west along the BNSF Railway and its highway companion, Route 66. We'll kick things off with an eastbound Santa Fe freight in 1993 at the California-Arizona state line above the Colorado River. It's a mythic crossing for both US 66 and the railroad, with a nice trio of war bonnets leading a string of Indian red boxcars. In this talk, I hope to share a little history and also some personal stories about the Southwest Transcon and the highway that parallels it for 3 states and more than 800 miles. So let's start with a little background. The final link in the Southwest Transcontinental Railroad was completed in Barstow, California in November 1885, when the Atlantic and Pacific, building west from the Midwest markets along the Santa Fe Trail, met the California Southern Railroad building north from Southern California. The town was then known as Waterman Junction, as seen in this telegram announcing the name change. Barstow also played a formative role in my life, as my dad, Chuck, and my mom, Jill, took me there on weekend vacations as a kid and sealed my love for trains, highways, and the Santa Fe. Barstow is a railroad town in the Mojave Desert with a huge classification yard and engine facility. It's a crew change point and a junction for trains that are heading either to and from Northern California or the LA Basin. The old locomotive shops were located at the east end of the yard, here, not far from the Harvey House, and it's where my dad would bring us after the weather cooled and he began photographing the blue and yellow locomotives. Some families spent their weekends at the beach, some in the mountains, some in Disneyland. We went to Barstow. So the Atlantic and Pacific built today's Transcon through New Mexico and Arizona to California, carving a route west through places like Kingman Canyon, seen above in its early days before the second main line was built to the right of the frame. At distant right, you can see National Trails Highway, the forerunner of Route 66. In its earliest days, the A&P was the gateway to the mysterious Southwest, with roadside attractions such as ancient cave dwellings and lava beds, illustrated here by an early information kiosk in downtown Flagstaff, Arizona. A milestone in the construction of the A&P was the 1884 completion of the bridge spanning the Colorado River. However, the Southern Pacific Railroad, which was already spreading its tentacles across California, was waiting for them. They had completed a rail route on the California side that blocked further progress. A standoff ensued, but A&P eventually scored SP's line through the Mojave Desert, which today is BNSF's Needles subdivision. Meanwhile, California Southern was building north from the San Diego area to Waterman Junction, with a northeast route through the towns of Colton and San Bernardino, Cajon Pass, and the Mojave Desert. The line was completed on November 10, 1885, creating the nation's second transcontinental railroad. Santa Fe controlled both the California Southern and the A&P, and the company now had access to Southern California. However, the new line had missed a sleepy little agricultural town called Los Angeles. The solution was with Southern Pacific, which began serving LA in 1874, and in 1876 had connected the town to the nation's first transcontinental railroad. For the next 2 years, until 1887, Santa Fe trains reached LA via trackage rights over Southern Pacific from a junction at Colton. Santa Fe finally reached LA in May of 1887 with its own route from San Bernardino via the towns of Rialto, Fontana, Upland, Cucamonga, and Glendora, which is pictured here with the chief, and via Pasadena. The legend of the Santa Fe Railway was taking shape, and it needed a partner. Enter Fred Harvey, who built the nation's first restaurant and hotel chain along the Santa Fe and beyond. 3,000 miles of hospitality that would shape the image and character of the Southwest Transcon. The Fred Harvey Company pioneered Southwest adventures based out of its railroad hotels. Harvey cars carried tourists to historic and exotic locales, the earliest road trips in the Southwest before the coming of Route 66. On the West Coast, Los Angeles' early days as an agriculture town were gone forever. As the city boomed with new growth brought by the railroads, Angelenos needed a big city train station. LA Union Passenger Terminal opened on May 3, 1939, uniting the services of Santa Fe, Southern Pacific, and Union Pacific. To celebrate the grand opening, LA staged a 3-day railroad pageant worthy of nearby Hollywood, titled Railroads Built the Nation, with patriotic parades of modern steam power from the Western Big Three. With the opening of LAUPT, today simply known as Union Station, Americans crisscrossed the Southwest and the Southland continued to explode with growth. Marketing departments fueled the Southern California mystique with images of picture-perfect weather combined with orange groves and snow-capped mountains, and of course, shiny streamlined trains pulled by colorful locomotives. One of those trains, the Streamline Chief, is seen eastbound climbing Cajon Pass in the 1950s. Santa Fe war bonnets and Cajon were made for each other, and scenes like this by Stan Kistler would become iconic. Speaking of iconic, downtown LA would never look this quaint again. It's hard to imagine the days when City Hall was the tallest building in LA, looming over Santa Fe's First Street yard and the concrete LA River. That's the Scout rolling along the river in a view by Donald Duke. This area is now filled with Metro LA's Red Line subway yard. 50 years after its opening, LA Union Station celebrated with an epic birthday party in May of 1989. At one point, a classic 1950s publicity photo was recreated using Union Pacific 951 and SP and Santa Fe cab units owned by the California State Railroad Museum. A new chapter of railroading was about to begin, and today Union Station is busier than ever with Amtrak, Metrolink, and Metro LA light rail trains. So I grew up 60 miles east of LA in the steel mill town of Fontana, in a house on Palmetto Avenue between the Santa Fe San Bernardino-Pasadena mainline and the old Pacific Electric San Bernardino line, then traveled by a weekday SP local. Cajon Pass was nearby, and I quickly fell in love with Devore, at the base of the pass, where Santa Fe's two mainlines drew alongside the SP's Palmdale cutoff. Devore became the ultimate hangout for a teenage rail geek in the early 1980s. I was there constantly with my friend Bob Spinuzzi. In 1981, my granddad had given me his Minolta SRT 101, and I started trying my hand at serious photography. I certainly did not start out taking pictures like this. This Devore sunrise is from 1993, about 12 years after snapping my earliest 35mm photos. In the early 1980s, two friends from New York gave me a trio of magazines that changed my life. Here are two of them: Dick Steinheimer's Cajon Pass Revisited and Ted Benson's landmark All Nevada issue. The third issue of Trains had the cover story of Stein's legendary Mojave Crossing photo essay, which you're going to hear more about in Ken's show later. I swear to God, a ray of light shone down from the heavens and I could hear a choir of angels. I still have all three magazines, and two of them are pictured here, although I have since bought extra copies to keep them in pristine condition. Dazzled by the adventures of my new heroes, I still face the realities of being a college student with not a lot of money for gas. So my regular trips in the mid to late 1980s mostly revolved between Cajon, West Colton, Beaumont Hill, and San Bernardino. Since I went to college in San Bernardino, I spent many hours at the station platform, keeping my eye on Santa Fe's San Bernardino shops, with regular hikes over the Mount Vernon overpass to see what new and shiny delights were emerging. Some of those rebuilds can be seen in the snowy Cajon Pass view of a Santa Fe piggyback rolling west at Blue Cut in 1985. In the distance, you'll see an SP freight climbing the Palmdale cutoff, built in 1967 for trains to bypass LA congestion. This is one of my fondest memories of the San Bernardino Valley: snow-capped mountains, orange groves, small towns, and quaint local trains. This tele-scene of the Redlands local in the late 1980s, long after this line had shed its passenger routes as the Kite Route, captures everything I loved about Southern Cal railroading. Another view of the Southern California that enticed Americans. The San Bernardino Valley frames the Redlands local in 1988. I was lucky enough to grow up with picturesque views with little change since pioneers first entered the LA Basin. Unfortunately, this view is now filled with offices and warehouses. By the time I began photographing trains, Santa Fe's famous streamliners were history. The railroad had reinvented itself as a high-speed corridor from Chicago to LA. Paradise was a great word to describe the crossing of Cajon Pass, seen here east of Summit, near Lugo, with the fresh snow on the San Gabriel Mountains. Santa Fe wasn't the only railroad in town, of course. Union Pacific used trackage rides from Daggett, a junction in the Mojave Desert a few miles east of Barstow, to Riverside Junction, west of San Bernardino. This was my first pan shot where I felt I finally got it right. It's 1984, and I'm riding in the back of my friend Bob Gallegos' pickup truck, east of Yermo at about 60 miles an hour, something they don't allow anymore. I'm a fanatic for UP's double-engine Centennials, and we had just shot the 6938 leading a train through Daggett, but this became my favorite picture of the evening. I was very fortunate to experience the original Big Three Western roads that built Southern California. This allowed one of the greatest spectacles I've ever seen in May of 1989, when UP 8444 and Daylight 4449 steamed side by side of Cajon Pass, following an appearance at LA Union Station's 50th anniversary party. The sound was mind-blowing. While spectacle was fun, Cajon allowed me to explore quieter, more ordinary scenes, and I began to experiment with light and shadow and different approaches to composition, like this westbound Santa Fe rolling through the steep cut west of Cajon Summit. I also discovered a love for detail views, like this bullet-riddled tie renewal sign. Santa Fe's Southern California Division logo was a beauty, and the big Q logo was the symbol of the railway's Total Quality Management campaign, a hot business fad in the 1990s. When Santa Fe recreated its famous Super Chief in 1989 for a corporate video, the unbelievable happened, and war bonnet F units once again stopped at Pasadena, the former station to Hollywood stars. This filming was a prelude to the return of red and silver as a corporate image and the birth of the modern superfleet. To me, this was the signature image of Cajon Pass in the 1990s. 4 superfleet war bonnets and a lone SD-40 rolling through Sullivan's Curve on a glorious summer morning. This place has been photographed so many times, and here I chose a wide view to emphasize the Mormon rocks. Life could not get any better for a California rail fan. My travels extended farther east, and I was captivated by the Mojave Desert and its vast expanse, where trains could be visible for 20 to 30 minutes before reaching my vantage point. Santa Fe 5048 is basking in the late afternoon sun as it winds its train west through ironically named Siberia, California, on the Needle Sub. Pushing my photo safaris east to Arizona, I realized the relationship between Santa Fe and historic Rev 66 spanned the entire Southwest, 3 states worth. My fascination for war bonnets and the Mother Road was sealed forever. This is one of my favorite images that shows the layers of road and railroad. In 1993, a beautiful trio of shiny new red and silver GEs splits 2 alignments of the old road in Kingman Canyon. The original route, National Trails Highway, can be seen in the foreground, and its mid-century replacement is above the power on the distant hilltop. Back in my home turf, change was in the wind for San Bernardino. Santa Fe had closed its locomotive shops, and a new intermodal facility began to take its place. A new LA commuter railroad, Metrolink, began transforming the parking lot where I'd shot countless photos, and it took over operations over much of the old Pasadena sub to LA. The biggest change came at the end of 1995, the merger of the Santa Fe and Burlington Northern Railroads. By the late 1990s, orange and green colors were becoming a frequent sight on Cajon Pass. This image captures the early rainbow era on Cajon. Heritage One colors have invaded the manned helper team for an eastbound, and in the distance you'll see the westbound's UP-SP combo about to pass another eastbound grinding up the hill. In 1997, BNSF ordered a final group of GEs painted in red and silver. I'd always wanted to honor one of my all-time favorite Trains magazine articles with an updated version of Stein's cover for his 1977 masterpiece, Mojave Crossing. I finally got my chance in spring of 1998, 20 years after this dog-eared magazine was printed. Well, now that I've shared some history, let's take a journey west from New Mexico, mirroring the generations of people who traveled to Santa Fe or who drove Route 66 in search of a new life in California. 2 landmark structures still survive in New Mexico from the Santa Fe era. The abandoned shops in Albuquerque, which the city hopes to transform into a transportation museum, although today you'll have a better chance seeing the interior in Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, and other shows and movies. The La Castaneda Harvey House Hotel in Las Vegas, New Mexico, has been restored to its former glory by preservation hero Alan Appelt. Looks very different than this photo that I took back around 2007. Alan restored the historic La Posada in Winslow, Arizona. The Castaneda has been opening in phases, but it's currently closed due to the coronavirus pandemic. We can't wait to visit when it reopens. A trip to northern New Mexico wouldn't be complete without chasing the Southwest Chief through the old passenger line via Raton, Las Vegas, and Glorieta Pass, home to the last stand of operating semaphores on a major rail line, although only Amtrak uses the route now. The soul of the Santa Fe is alive and well in this land, but I'm hearing that the semaphores may be finally nearing retirement. Still, I'm always on the hunt for any surviving Santa Fe signal, and in Albuquerque, rail runner trains still pass searchlights and cantilevers in town. Plus, they make a bold, colorful sight. The old shop buildings are out of camera frame to the right. And now we're following the Transcon west, with a view that's New Mexico true, as the State Tourism Board likes to say, and straight out of a super cheap travel guide. This sweeping mesa at Mesita evokes the Panavision style of a spaghetti western, and it dwarfs passing stack trains. Also at Mesita, we find an abandoned truck that's straight out of The Grapes of Wrath, John Steinbeck's landmark novel about the story of Oklahoma refugees desperately seeking a new life in California. Steinbeck's novel is where Route 66 gained a new nickname, the Mother Road, the Road of Flight. Later in the post-World War II years, a new generation of motorists would pace the Chief, El Capitan, and other streamliners through the Southwest in search of a new beginning. The contemporary BNSF is a high-speed, high-density railroad that fields more than 80 trains a day. Here, a westbound coal winds through the curves at New Laguna, while an eastbound stack train waits in the wings for its turn. Until the early 2010s, miles of code lines still flank the Transcon, as seen here in Old Laguna, but the relics have since fallen to progress. The line is pretty stark and cold without them. I'm a big fan of roadside attractions, and this is the best of both worlds. Interstate 40 and US 66 are represented in this sprawling New Mexico map on a Santa Fe caboose display in Gallup. Searching for the Santa Fe legacy includes the railway's distinctive cantilever signals, one of which gained a new life with a signal head transplant at West Defiance in 2007. And here is the Great Southwest as seen from I-40. A rainbow set of locomotives rolls west by 66 near the New Mexico-Arizona border as this old sign greets modern-day travelers. My internal editor can even live with that random apostrophe in the word cameras, although my wife Laura says she's bringing a yellow can of paint to fix it the next time we're there, if it's still standing. This is one of the few times I'm glad I took the interstate instead of the old road. And here I'm standing on a segment of Old 66 in Carino, Arizona, hurriedly setting up the tripod to catch a retreating storm. At right, you can see the headlight glow of a BNSF freight and the lights of I-40 at left. I recently became a fan of Mary Austin, and there's a passage in her book, The Land of Little Rain, that speaks to me whenever I see this view. For all the toll the desert takes on a man, it gives compensations, deep breaths, deep sleep, and the communion of the stars. So we'll keep moving west as Austin's words echo in our minds as the Transcon passes through the outskirts of Petrified Forest National Park. Even though all other traces are gone, the Santa Fe name lives on in a highway overpass here. This stretch of northeast Arizona is much more remote and stark. We're east of Holbrook and Winslow as mesas frame the passing of the Southwest Chief near Adamana. And no Route 66 trip would be complete without staying at a wigwam motel, like this example in Holbrook, Arizona. Only 3 exist in the U.S., and 2 of them are along Route 66, here and in San Bernardino. The third is in Kentucky. And here's one of the highway's most recognizable landmarks. Here it is, the Jackrabbit Trading Post between Holbrook and Winslow, seen in November 2005 with an eastbound grain empties. The sign has been used in countless photo ops, selfies, and even appearances in Pixar's Cars movies. We've reached the east end of Winslow Yard, a crew change terminal where the Southwest Chief is leaving town as the rising sun lights the players of today's Transcon. And yet more faces are revealed as the Chief rolls east and 4877 East rumbles to life. The real attraction for most Winslow visitors is La Posada, the last of the Harvey houses designed by Mary Coulter. After the hotel was closed by Santa Fe, the building became its division offices. When that era ended, Alan Affeldt saved it from the wrecking ball and transformed it into a glorious resort, complete with the acclaimed Turquoise Room restaurant. It's currently closed due to the COVID-19 outbreak, but Alan is committed to bringing La Posada back to life. It's also a stop for the Southwest Chief, seen leaving town on a 17-degree morning. The train has endured funding battles for years, and its long-term fate is uncertain, given the impact of the coronavirus. With the La Posada and La Castaneda coming back to life, I'm hoping it will soon be possible again to ride the train directly to two great Harvey houses. At the west end of Winslow is an overpass that offers an incredible view of the Transcon. I'm sure everyone's pretty familiar with these views. Train after train rolls to and from Flagstaff in a scene that's been captured by scores of great photographers, but it's impossible to resist. Here is an earthworm grain empties hustling up the grade, framed by the San Francisco peaks. What I love most are the wide open spaces in Arizona's high desert and the long shadows cast by passing trains. Looking east at Winslow on that same overpass, yet another grain empties is passed by, and now a stack train is roaring west into the last light of a December day. Santa Fe's stylish signposts are all but retired, but one survives at Darling, Arizona. Darling is the Santa Fe name, but it's known to Route 66 travelers as Winona. Like Bobby Troop sang, "Don't forget Winona." Clearly, we're no longer in the desert. The high elevation forests that surround Flagstaff are thick, and this long lens view of an eastbound double stack taken from the gas station by I-40 at Winona. Another hallmark of the Santa Fe heritage are the black signal bridges that were once a common sight on the Arizona Divide, but the classic signals were replaced in the early 2000s with high-tech silver bridges. Both the Old Road and BNSF are bustling in downtown Flagstaff. This November 2005 view is from the Lowell Observatory on Mars Hill, one of the first times I ever used a webcam to find a photo spot. I was operating the cam and I swung it away from its usual angle to look at downtown, and I noticed a narrow opening between the trees. So on my next trip, I promptly drove up, carried my cameras past all the exhibits, and wandered into the trees, and it paid off. BNSF's crossing of the Arizona Divide is the highest point on the former Santa Fe Transcon, at more than 7,300 feet in elevation. This westbound stack, seen at Maine, has already topped the Yampai summit. By the time it reaches the Colorado River, it will have descended more than 6,800 feet. With a railroad so ultra-modern as BNSF, it's reassuring to find some old-school action in Williams, a charming Route 66 town that's home to the Grand Canyon Railway. This 1990s view of number 18 returning to town is a bit dated, as 18 was sold many years ago. Steam isn't used daily anymore, but when it is, ex-Burlington engine number 4960 answers the call. So in Seligman, let's visit the Delgadillo's gift shop. Angel Delgadillo is the founder of the modern-day Route 66 revival. He was once the town's barber and recalls traffic dropping from thousands of cars daily to just a handful after the opening of I-40. Angel's gift shop has become an international tourist attraction, and he'll celebrate his 93rd birthday on Sunday. He only does haircuts by appointment now, and I finally had the honor for my 50th birthday in 2016. I remember saying to Angel, "This isn't going to be much of a cut." And he says, "You're kidding me. These are the toughest ones of all. I can't hide my mistakes." And so next door to Angel's barbershop and gift shop is the Snowcap, another Route 66 classic founded by Angel's late brother, Lon. You'll walk through a pathway of business cards before placing your order. Lon started the tradition of groaner gags that his family continues, like offering used straws and napkins and telling you, "There's a menu, do you want to look?" before slapping a look candy bar down on the counter. Leaving the high country west of Seligman, BNSF trains return to wide open spaces and big skies, such as this eastbound in Audley. Touchstones between the highway and railway are easy to find in Kingman, Arizona. In 2004, War Bonnet number 631 roared past the landmark water tanks in downtown. Red and silver locomotives are tough to find today on the Transcon, but that's not true at the El Trovatore Motor Court, a restored gem that literally wears its red and silver colors with pride. And like the Jode family in Grapes of Wrath, it's time to cross the Colorado into the promised land of California. Here's a westbound framed by the Needles, the fearsome rock formations that gave the nearby city its name. I-40 can also be seen in this image, which is possible only in the early morning and evening hours of summer. Santa Fe signage abounds in the bridges surrounding the Colorado. This Route 66 span is nearly as good looking as when it was last painted. At Needles, one of the last cantilever signals in California was operating into the late 2000s. Today, the signal and a companion have been installed in downtown Needles on Route 66 next to the restored El Garces Harvey House. And also in Needles stood an old ice reefer car with wonderful details to savor. Around 2012, I discovered it was repainted, and I'm so glad I took time to preserve the original character of this car. Santa Fe Celebrity 484 number 3751 is steaming past famous Roy's Cafe in Amboy, California, in the Mojave Desert. This was a photograph that marinated in my brain for many years after I'd figured out how to frame passing trains with the old cafe. I swore if 3751 ever ran again by the cafe, I would be ready. And thank goodness one of the Amtrak units had problems that day, and 3751 was working hard. It's just an incredible sight. And about 50 to 60 fans were at the crossing west of town, all shooting basically the same picture, and I had this spot all to myself. Wide open spaces in the Mojave Desert west of Amboy. I'm reminded of another Mary Austin line about the desert. Void of life it never is, however, dry the air and villainous the soil. In 1998, this lonely electrical box east of Ludlow still carried the names of Santa Fe and Route 66, reflecting a Mojave Desert sunset. Today, the old highway that follows the Needles sub is referred to as National Trails Highway, the name it originally wore before US 66 was commissioned in 1926. I love the hills west of Ludlow, and this War Bonnet group in spring 1998 is a favorite picture. Ludlow was once home base to the Tonopah and Tidewater Railroad, as well as the Ludlow and Southern, both mining railroads that passed into history. The grades of the old TNT are visible in this view, and if you visit the town, you can even inspect the old engine pits. The TNT Rails logo can be seen in front of the Ludlow Cafe in town. There's a motel next door, but you have to check in at the Chevron gas station across the road. Seen at West Daggett with modern signals, BNSF Cadiz' local has departed Barstow for its namesake town, a blink and you'll miss it spot east of Amboy. Alas, these Yellow Bonnet Jeeps are no longer in service, but you can still find Yellow Bonnet GP60s in local service around Southern California. Well, never in my lifetime did I expect to see a big boy along Route 66, but the unbelievable happened last October when UP 4014 operated a pair of weekend excursions from West Colton to Barstow and back as a fundraiser for the Rail Giants Museum, where the 4884 was once cared for. I needed a photo of the big boy beside a painted highway shield, and I got my chance at the old station of Nebo, near Daggett, a few miles east of Barstow. The train was making a long reverse move to the UP Yermo yard east of here. Mission accomplished, and no cars in the shot. Another uniquely Route 66 photo of the big boy came at the Mohawk Mini Mart, which is being restored in Oro Grande, east of Victorville. My wingman Bob Spinuzzi and I were chasing the train, and we passed literally thousands of people along the BNSF, taking basically look-alike photos when we came upon the Mini Mart. Once we got there, though, the steam train was nearly silent, and it snuck up on us. After the longest panicked camera juggle of my life, I somehow got the shot. I could still hear Bob saying, "It's here, it's here, shoot it, shoot it, shoot it." And now we're past Victorville en route to Cajon Pass. This place, Frost, is home to a flyover near the Mojave Narrows Regional Park. This was a truly epic moment when the Big Boy excursion was returning from Barstow and completed a perfect rolling meet with a BNSF intermodal train. And finally, we're back in Cajon Pass. The lack of snow on the mountains means it's June, and BNSF 7600 East is breathing a sigh of relief after conquering Cajon's summit. A significant piece of Santa Fe history was lost in 2007 and 2008 when construction of a third main line through Cajon resulted in the daylighting of the only two tunnels on the pass, which had guarded passing trains for nearly 100 years. I happened to be in the area immediately after crews lifted the roof off Tunnel 2. The loss of the tunnels was eased by great new photographic opportunities. I love this view of an eastbound rolling through the newly exposed Tunnel 2. Even the crew had to get pictures of this extremely rare scene. And the pinnacle came one foggy night, as Tunnel 2 had been reduced to little more than an empty portal. My friend Bob and I had been exploring the remains as darkness fell, and the gathering fog demanded a close encounter of the third kind with an eastbound freight. Against the odds, a virtual time machine for Santa Fe fans has survived for the past 20 years in the LA Basin. A 9-mile segment of the original 2nd District, aka the Pasadena subdivision, has been owned by Metrolink and is a trip back to the early 90s when ATSF sold the line. Lighted cantilevers, target signals, code lines, date nails can all be found between Pomona and Glendora, and a weekday local occasionally boasts yellow bonnet GP60s. Here's the local crossing Route 66 in Glendora with two shiny former war bonnets. Unfortunately, this back to the 90s scene is slowly being erased as work begins to transform the line into an extension of Metro LA's Gold Line to Pomona. The route of the Chiefs will soon be relocated to make room for a double-track transit speedway. And now we're back in Los Angeles, looking at the North Broadway Bridge, an original segment of Route 66. Just north of the bridge, Santa Fe's line from Pasadena once crossed the LA River, and trains rolled south along the west bank to the First Street Yard. BNSF engines were never a common sight along the river, but that changed when Metrolink leased a fleet of pilot units to aid its cab car fleet. For a brief time, BNSF locomotives were downtown LA regulars. We're now standing on the North Broadway Bridge that we just saw. Remember that 1950s slide where City Hall was the top dog of the LA skyline? Those days are long gone. Today, legacies are all that remain of the Santa Fe and Southern Pacific in downtown. The former SP Bullring Yard is now a beautiful park skirted by LA Metro's Gold Line light rail. And this is where the Santa Fe's Pasadena line once crossed the LA River and entered the city just north of the Broadway Bridge. Today, the Gold Line has replaced the old bridge with a new span, and Metro trains speed across the river in a deliciously noir scene. Another beautiful legacy in downtown LA is Mission Tower, unmanned but still standing proudly at the gateway to Union Station. This Amtrak surfliner evokes memories of Santa Fe's San Diegans. The 400 series fleet of F-59s has since been sold to Chicago Metra, and I really miss them. And here's my tribute to Santa Fe and the 6th Street Bridge, courtesy of a San Diego excursion by 44 number 3751, steaming under the Art Deco span that's appeared in countless movies, TV shows, and commercials. Sadly, the bridge was dismantled a few years ago due to a fatal asbestos ailment, and a swoopy, ultra-modern replacement will open next year. Insert eye roll here. But before I sign off, I'll end with one of my favorite images of the Santa Fe surviving legacy. This is in Riverside, a solid 30 minutes away from the nearest segment of Route 66, but this classic black signal bridge still serves the Transcon to this day. The war bonnets have since been repainted, but in 2015, I was blessed to experience a wonderful Santa Fe reunion. And a final blue hour scene of an eastbound BNSF at Arrowhead Junction on the Needles sub in 2016. Thanks again to Scott and Ken, the team. Thanks to the many, many amazing people who have inspired me over the last 4 decades of photography. And a special thanks to my awesome wife, Laura, who is sitting in the other room watching like all of you, for her support and for her keen editor's eye. Stay healthy, everyone, and take care. Thank you.
Elrond, thank you. Excellent, excellent show. Feels good to take even a virtual road trip right now.
No kidding.
So when we can get out and travel again, where's the next spot you want to visit on Route 66?
Well, you know, I think it's time to visit the Midwest. I think I've done the Southwest so much that I need to see the other half of the highway from Oklahoma to Chicago. And, you know, because that's pretty much the single most embarrassing question I get is, well, have you traveled the entire road? And I always have to lower my head and say no. So there's a lot of gaps. I've traveled in Oklahoma and a little bit in Missouri and Illinois, but I've never done the full stretch.
So for us Midwesterners, what are the highlights in this part of the world that we should be investigating when we can?
Oh, I'm sorry, say it again?
I say for us Midwesterners, what are the highlights on this end of the road that we should be investigating once we have the chance to do so?
Oh, my goodness. There is a great drive-in in Missouri. There are wonderful bridges in, oh, my goodness, in St. Louis. There are, oh, my gosh, Texas is just filled with cafes and diners. And it's funny, if you watch the old movie, Pixar's movie, Cars, you could pretty much see all the highlights of the Midwest. All just they're all just recreated in the movie. But yeah, there's all kinds of great places.
Well, a couple of questions. Lawrence Perlman asks, how much planning and scene setting did you do? Do you scout locations over the years?
Yes, originally I started, my whole idea to do a book came around 1991, and I thought, well, this will be easy. This should only take a few years. Little did I know. And
yeah, we've all had a moment like that, I think.
I'm pretty sure we all do. But yeah, that was it. And, I went out shooting and immediately realized, this is a whole different animal. There was probably about a 15-year period from when I got to the point where I was ready to put the book out. And towards the end of that period, once I knew I had a publisher lined up, I would make trips out. And I would have maybe an 8-9 day trip planned and a checklist of photos. But the key I always tell people is allow yourself lots of time for surprises. Don't overplan your trip, because you need to have time in case something magical happens, like that lightning storm at Purino, or staying at a wigwam motel where they say, well, there's only one room left, but you can, if you crawl into the fuse box and turn the lights off at night, you could stay there, and which of course I'm thrilled to do, but there's just Route 66 is all about unpredictability, and so you want to enjoy that part of the experience too. So yeah, many of those were planned, but a lot of those were really happy surprises that thankfully I was able to take advantage of.
Well, Jacob Adams has a recommendation, which I will heartily second, having done this myself, but he says when you're in St. Louis, you have to stop at Union Station and Ted Drew's on Old 66 for a frozen custard. So
there we go. Thank you for saving me. See, this is why I need to get to the Midwest more.
St. Louis Union Station is an absolutely spectacular structure, and that's really a fascinating railroad town all around. So I'll definitely second Jacob's recommendation on that.
That's really good idea. Really good idea. Thanks.
Well, Elrond, thank you again. It's just an absolute treat to see and to share your work, and again, really appreciate being able to go on this virtual road trip right now when I think a lot of us wish we could be taking the real one. So thank you again.
Sure, I'm glad I could help. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Scott.